Hi there, I'm Katy Rose, and welcome to the Rooted Reinvention, a podcast exploring the real-world journey of reinventing who we are without burning out or burning our whole life down. I teach people how to make lasting change by melding my Masters in Neuroscience and my Cognitive Therapy qualification with common self-help tools, spiritual concepts, and my personal experience. Because being yourself doesn't need to feel so damn hard. To get more information on podcast episodes, please visit rootedreinvention.com/podcast. Welcome to today's podcast episode. It's May, which is unfathomable that we are in month 5 of 2021. I don't know how I feel about that. Do you? Mostly it makes me think of the spoof of that Backstreet Boys song because they sing and it sounds like they're saying it's gonna be May. I will link Jonathan Young's cover of that song in the show notes in case you have no idea what I'm talking about and want to know. In April, I did a bit of experimenting with how much I felt I needed to get done. So it was a little bit around productivity, a little bit around my business planning, a bit about content creation and what would happen if I just pulled back on how much I expect of myself. Which I really liked doing. It felt safe. It felt like a short amount of time to experiment with kind of getting out of my comfort zone around my perfectionist tendencies and not having everything on my list done. I told myself that I would do this experiment for April. It felt like a reasonable amount of time to let the experiment run and gather the data and see how I felt, and that I'd review it for May. I am recording this on Friday the 30th of April in the evening, and I have no clue what May is going to look like. And if you know me in any capacity, you will know that that is unusual and quite uncomfortable for me, actually. I like to have control over the things that I normally have control over. So I have always been a planner. I have always been that person who's organised, who's got her to-do lists, who prepares for things and kind of schedules when she's going to get stuff done. That's kind of how I naturally am. And now I find myself at the end of a month where I didn't get everything done that I would have liked to have, in an ideal world, gotten done. Reflecting on the fact that I didn't like it and I'm not happy with how little I got done. I wish I'd accomplished more. And I'm noticing that actually I didn't get more rest time, even though I specifically stopped myself from doing certain pieces of work. So the experiment was to kind of assess how much I force myself to work when I don't want to, how much content I try to create when I have plenty of content that I don't necessarily share all the time, and also to think about the conflicting priorities. So I have easily 30 to 40 projects in my head at any one time that I could work on. And because I'm an organised person who plans everything, 25 of these are usually on a do not look at this list until you've at least completed, a different project. So when one of my projects is complete, I can then look down my list and pick another one to fill that space in. And what I found with my experiment of April to cut out even more of those projects and not allow myself to fill that time in and just to kind of sit with it. It was interesting to note that although I was more connected to the people around me, so I actually had more sort of social time, and by social time I mean typing away on a Discord chat, as we've still been in lockdown and I'm not comfortable with going out yet. But for me, that kind of time spent in communication with others, with my friends and my family, that did increase a bit. but that did not increase to fill all the time I had. So it's been really interesting to see that, I didn't put all this pressure on myself to achieve X, Y, and Z like I normally would. And there were some pros of that, in that I did kind of let my brain just go off on tangents a little bit more. I did connect more with people in my community in some way or other. However, the cons really outweighed the pros for me, which I have to say I wasn't expecting. It's been really interesting to kind of come out the other side, and basically I'm sharing this podcast. This is me going through a reflection of how I found it, because I don't know what I'm going to do with May, and May starts in 7 hours, May starts tomorrow, and I don't know what I'm going to do with that. So today is a little bit of here's my reflection in real time, because I haven't planned this out. I've just thought, I need to reflect on that experiment and talk about that. And that's kind of my notes. So bear with if this is a little bit in and out, but hopefully it's useful to at least see the process as well. So if you're new to the idea of experimentation, this is something that we use a lot in cognitive behavioural therapy, which I am a trained low-intensity practitioner of, so I can do brief, low-level intervention with people who need support. And we do a lot of experimentation. So it might be that we have a theory that, if I do X, Y will happen. If I don't do X, then Y won't happen. This will go wrong if I don't do it this way. So one of the common ones for perfectionists is, if I don't force myself to be really high achieving, then I'll just be lazy and I'll never get anything done. That's quite a common one that I've worked with, and on occasion deal with myself, because we're all human. And the experiment that I kind of had for April for myself to kind of test the theory of was, what if I stepped back from all of the busy work and the meaningful content creation side of things from my business for the month of April, and just let what I currently have be, I guess. So I still wrote my newsletter, I still linked to things, I still shared on social media, here's an article I wrote a few months ago, here's something from this time last year. And I was still working on writing articles and content in the background, I just wasn't sharing it. And I expected to find that this would make me more creative, that I might even get really ahead in my content creation. So content for me is any articles, any emails, any videos I make, podcast episodes, for example, anything that's going to be consumed by you, basically, anything that's for other people to read or engage with that will help them. That's kind of how I categorize that. And the theory around this was that if I step back from sharing it, it'll take the pressure off it having to be perfect, which had been getting in the way. I had been blocked around, I can't even start because what if this isn't the right thing? Again, I'm aware that this is a common one I help other people with. Sometimes when you're in that moment yourself, you can't see your own blind spots. So that was something that I was trying to kind of problem solve, kind of explore, and work out kind of where my minimum is, what's the minimum amount for me to be doing, but also what would I be doing with my time if I weren't putting all this pressure on myself. And so when I reflect on this experiment of, what if I step back from doing all these things and pushing myself to achieve and create, and just did the minimum of that side of things and focus more on connecting with other people, exercising, meditating. Like, I had some ideas of what I was going to do with the time in between. And what I actually did was I scrolled YouTube, I got myself a free Spotify account and lost a few hours down that rabbit hole. I did have conversations with a few people in more depth, so I did spend more time connecting with other people over sort of Messenger and things, but nowhere near to the degree of the amount of, most of my time was not spent doing that, basically. Most of the free time that I created was essentially wasted. I didn't feel rested, I felt guilty for not achieving, and then at the end of the month, it's the 30th now, and I'm looking back and thinking, what on earth did I do with this month? What was the point of that? Now, those are thoughts I can challenge. Thankfully, I have the training in cognitive restructuring, which is a way of challenging the thoughts and just questioning them and saying, well, actually, was it a waste of time? This was an experiment. Now you know. I've definitely learned things from doing this because I'd always assumed that this was the thing that I never had the guts to do, but would be really helpful. And now I've done it, I know it's not, and I don't need to beat myself up for not doing it again. However, this does also give me a slightly new problem in that my plan was to do it for April and reassess for May, with the idea that I'd have a clear picture of what works for May, and or that I would continue the experiment into May to make sure I had enough kind of information. Basically, I don't want to have to do this again, so I need to make sure that I do it properly this time, so I never have to return to this place where I force myself to go against every instinct in my body to be a perfectionist achiever. Which, even as I say it, sounds hilarious and very sad, but that is the human condition at this moment. So I'm kind of sitting here thinking, well, now what? And I'll be honest, I don't fully know at this point, while recording this, exactly what tomorrow will bring. But what I have learned is that I can sit through the discomfort of these experiments. It's a reminder that although I prefer to be an achiever and a perfectionist, with some support and some accountability, I can force myself not to put so much pressure on myself to achieve in that way, which is a useful thing to know. I did also actually read, now that I'm thinking about it, I did read a bit more of some books, which was some of the time spent. So that was part of my goal, was to see if I could spend the time on some of the other things that I used to do. So that's another thing that's worth knowing, that little bit did sort of half work for me. And equally, I think what it has done is made me really consider exactly what kind of model I want to be taking Rooted Reinvention in. So for those of you who don't know, I'm trained life coach and I'm trained in low intensity cognitive therapy. I have a master's in psychology and neuroscience. And I have been helping people in various different roles since 2011 using a mixture of this information and these techniques and strategies. And I've reached the point in 2021 where I am really trying to listen to my instincts to get back to that core self of who I am, what I want to be doing, and how I can best help people. I mean, this is really all an experiment in, I know that helping people is important to me, it's one of my core values, and I know that I'm so angry that the things that I've learned, they don't teach in schools, so how can I teach this information in the most effective way for the people who need it? So in January, I started a kind of trial with the community, still ongoing, that trial, but it has definitely again in April taken a step back as I explore exactly what does and doesn't work for me. And I find myself staring at this list, which I have scribbled. I have scribbled this list on the back of an envelope that came in the mail this morning. And just looking through the projects that I want to work on, that I have been working on, that have been sat at the back of my mind, or that even I've been contemplating. So one of the other things that I've noticed with this month off of these projects is that my mind just comes up with more projects that I might want to try. So looking on it, although it was a frustrating experiment, I feel like it was worth doing, which is always a good thing for me to know that whatever you've tried, especially if you really struggled with it, was worth the time and effort you put in. And what I'm going to be doing this weekend is looking through the list of projects, looking through and thinking, how much time and energy do I have to focus on those projects? Do I have space for one more project than I did in April, or two? Because I actually cut about 5 projects from my kind of must-do list. And I still worked on some of them some of the time, but without that pressure and certain targets to hit. For those of you who have taken any of my courses, particularly the Finishing Projects course or my old Bring About Balance group coaching, will know that there is some psychological theory to suggest that between 5 and 7 different projects is what our brain can kind of comfortably manage, depending on the person. And therefore I tend to give myself 6 project slots, one of which is day job, one of which is my physical health, because if I don't look after myself with my body, then I'm not going to be able to do any of the other stuff. And then allocating what's next, and then allocating what's left into equal portions where I can. So really, this is a welcome to May. You've made it through the first third of the year, and take a moment where you can just to consider how things are going for you, how the year is for you so far, what's working for you, what isn't working for you, and is there maybe an experiment that you need to do to kind of say, well, actually, if this isn't working for me, what if I stopped, what if I tweaked it, what if I changed this, and do that for a month and see how you feel, see if it changes the outcome. If you may find you get the same results with less effort in some cases. So I think it's always worth kind of exploring kind of the what if when it comes to how much pressure we put on ourselves. And if you didn't achieve very much in April, please know you're not the only one, and it's okay. We are still going through a global pandemic. Take all the time you need. It's okay to rest. It's normal for us not to be productive in times of high stress, particularly prolonged stress, like we've all been through at some level. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and as always, you can find out more at rootedreinvention.com. Take care, remember you are more capable than you often realise, and I'll see you next time. Bye!